Welcome to Savi YouTube channel from Sai Vidya Institute of Technology, Bangalore. I am Dr. T.G. Manjunath, Professor and HOD, Department of EEE. In the last session, we have started the new topic, that is two-port networks. I gave you the introduction of two-port networks, the necessity of two-port networks, and how to write the defining equations of different parameters. So, we are studying this two-port network to calculate or to find different parameters for the given network or the system. What parameters we are finding? Impedance parameters, admittance parameters, hybrid parameters, and transmission parameters, also known as ABCD parameters. So, those things we discussed in the last video. Now, in this session, now let us find one by one, that is Z parameters, Y, H and ABCD parameters. First one, to find Z parameters. To find Z parameters. Here, to find any parameters or to obtain relationship between any parameters or to solve any problem in this module, you should know defining equations of each parameter. How to write the defining equations? Already explained. Please kindly go through my last video on two-port network. Now, the defining equations. Defining equations of Z parameters are voltage equations. That is, V1 is equal to Z11 I1 plus Z12 I2. V2 is equal to Z21 I1 plus Z22 I2. You have to memorize these equations or you have to remember the table which I gave in the last class. So, these are the defining equations of Z parameters, that is V1 depending on I1 I2, V2 is also depending on I1 I2. Now, my intention is to find Z parameters. Which are the Z parameters here? Z11, Z12, Z21 and Z22. Now, let this equation number 1, this is equation number 2. Now, in this equation, suppose if I want to find Z11, I will make the current I2 0. Where is I2 here? If I consider this is a two-port network, I2 is nothing but current coming at the output port. So, how to make this I2 0? If I create open circuit at the output port or output terminal, definitely I can make I2 0. Now, by creating open circuit at the output port, I will make I2 0. Once you make I2 0, I will get Z11 is equal to V1 by I1. Okay? Similarly, in the second equation, if I again make I2 0, I can find Z21 is equal to V2 by I1. Similarly, if I find these two parameters, I will make I1 0. Where is I1? I1 is nothing but current coming at the input port. So, how to make current I1 0? Again create open circuit. If you create open circuit in the network at the input port, you can make I1 0. Once you make I1 0, I can find these two parameters. That is Z12 is equal to V1 by I2, Z22 equal to V2 by I2. That is, to find these two parameters, that is Z11 and Z21, make I2 equal to 0. That is open circuit. Open circuit, the output port open circuit the output port, then what happens? So equation 1 becomes V1 is equal to Z11 I1 because I2 is 0. Therefore, Z11 is equal to V1 by I1 at I2 equal to 0. Similarly, equation 2 becomes what? V2 is equal to Z21 I1. Z21 I1. Therefore, Z21 is equal to what? V2 by I1 at I2 equal to 0. Okay. Now, similarly, I have to find these two parameters. Now, if you observe here, okay. Now, to find Z12 and Z22, Z12 and Z22, make I1 equal to 0. This is I1 equal to 0. That is open circuit. Open circuit. The input port. Open circuit the input port. Then what happens? Equation 1 gives V1 is equal to Z1 to I2. Z1 to I2 because I1 you are making 0. That gives Z12 is equal to V1 by I2. Z1 equal to V1 by I2 at I1 equal to 0. Similarly, equation 2 becomes what? Equation 2 becomes what? V2 is equal to Z2 to I2. Therefore, Z22 is equal to V2 by I2 at I1 equal to 0. That's all. Now you got all the parameters. Now, my intention is to define what is Z11 represents, what is Z12 represents, Z21 and Z12, what this represents. Now, all of you observe here. If you come here, Z11, it is the ratio is V1 by I1, that is V by I. Z2 by Z21, V by I. This is V by I, this is V by I. All are V by I only. V by I means it is impedance. Means all are impedances only. But what impedance it is? What impedance? This is input voltage. V1 is represented nothing but input voltage. This is input current. Because in this two-port network, we have represented V1 as input voltage, I1 as input current. So, input voltage by input current is what? Input impedance. Input voltage by input current is input impedance. Suppose if you come here, Z22, this is what? Output voltage by output current. Hence, it is output impedance. Okay. Next, here, this ratio is V2 by I1. Output voltage by input current, and another one Z12 is input voltage by output current, but the ratio is V by I, hence it is impedance, but this is output by input, this is input by output. Whenever the ratio is V by I, and if the ratio is output by input or input by output, then we use the word transfer impedance. Hence these two Z12 and Z21 are called transfer impedance. Okay. Now let us define what is this. Z11 is nothing but input impedance with output port open circuited. So to find this, what you are doing? You are creating open circuit at the output port. Hence, we have to define properly. Z11 is equal to input impedance with output port. Port is nothing but what? Terminals. Open circuited. Okay. What is this Z22? This is output impedance with input port open circuited, because you are making I1 0. Next, what is Z21? It is nothing but transfer impedance with output port open circuited. This is nothing but transfer impedance with the input port open circuited. So, this is how to define all these parameters. Now, let us write what is these parameters one by one. So, now Z12 is let us come from one by one. Now Z11 is input impedance with output port open circuited, and Z22 is output impedance with input port open circuited, and Z12 is transfer impedance with output port open circuited. Z21 is again transfer impedance with input port open circuited. That is how to define those parameters. Now finally, after defining this, let us write an equivalent circuit for this Z parameters. Okay. Now let us write an equivalent circuit for this Z parameters. Okay, now let us write the equivalent circuit for this Z parameters. If you see the defining equations of Z parameters, both are voltage equations. This voltage equal to this voltage plus this voltage, this voltage equal to this voltage plus this voltage. That means it is nothing but KVL, voltage equation. Now hence KVL is always applied to a closed loop or a path. Hence we should get one loop at the input port, other loop at the output port, because V1 is coming at the input port, V2 is coming at the output port. Hence this is one loop, this is another loop. Hence the circuit consisting of two loops coming here. So let us write, this is a common ground, I can write, and this is the output, and this is the input. What is the voltage at the input? So V1. What is the voltage at the output? V2. Okay. Already we have defined V1 and V2. Current coming is I1 and I2. Here I1 will be coming. Here I2 will be coming. So this is how to represent. Now V1 is equal to what? Z11 I1. So I1 is coming here. If it passes through Z11, will get a Z11 I1 voltage drop plus Z12 I2. So V1 is equal to Z11 I1 plus Z12 I2. Here I should form a loop. Here I2 is not coming, I2 is coming at the output port. Therefore, I cannot represent here just like in series Z12 because I1 is coming here, I2 is not coming here, but I want I2. Therefore, this term is represented by a dependent voltage source like this. Dependent voltage source, that is value is Z12 I2. Polarity plus minus to match this equation. This is the first loop equation. Second, again V2 is equal to Z21 I1 plus Z22 I2. I2 is coming here. If I write in series with this Z22, we will get this voltage drop Z22 I2. Again Z21 I1, since I1 is existing at the input port, again I have to represent this term by dependent voltage source. Plus minus, it is Z21 I1. That means, what is the meaning of this? It is a dependent source, value is Z12 I2, it is a voltage source depending on I2. Where is I2? I2 is the current at the output port. Dependent source depending on current I1. I1 is nothing but current coming at the input port. This is how to write the equivalent circuit. Equivalent circuit. Okay. Okay. This is how to find the Z parameters and how to define the Z parameters. So Z parameters, if they ask the question in the university examination, define Z parameters or explain Z parameters, you have to explain whatever I have explained so far. Okay. Now let us go for finding Y parameters. Now let us find Y parameters. The defining equations. The defining equations of Y parameters are current equations. You know, that is current equation I1 is equal to Y11 V1 plus Y12 V2, I2 is equal to Y21 V1 plus Y22 V2. So you refer the previous video for this defining equations how to write. Let this equation 1, let this equation 2. You have to memorize the equations. Now my intention is to find y parameters, that is y11, y12, y21, y22. Similar to previous case, we are making one of the variable 0 here. To find these two parameters, we are going to make v2 0. How to make v2 0? v2 is nothing but voltage at the output port. How to make voltage 0? By creating short circuit. So even when you are solving problems also, to find these two parameters, we are going to create short circuit. So under short circuit condition, voltage is 0. If we make v2 0, we can find these two parameters. y11 is equal to I1 by V1, y21 is equal to I2 by V1. Similarly, to find these two parameters, make V1 0, means create the short circuit at the input port so that V1 becomes 0. Then you can find Z12 is equal to I1 by V2, Z22 is equal to I2 by V2. Okay? So to find y11 and y21, make v2 equal to 0, that is short circuit the output port. Then what happens? So equation 1 gives what? I1 is equal to y11 v1. Therefore y11 is equal to I1 by v1 at v2 equal to 0. Similarly, equation 2 becomes what? I2 is equal to y21 v1. Therefore y21 is equal to I2 by V1 at V2 equal to 0. Okay. Second equation, this is 0. I2 equal to Y21 V1. So Y21 is equal to I2 by V1 at V2 equal to 0. Similarly, to find these two parameters, I will make V1 0. All of observe here. To find Y11 and Y21, make what? V1 equal to 0. That is short circuit the input port. Short circuit the input port. Then what happens? Equation 1 gives I1 is equal to y12 v2, gives y12 is equal to I1 by v2 at v1 equal to 0. Similarly, equation 2 gives what? I2 is equal to y22 v2. Therefore, y22 is equal to what? I2 by v2 at v1 equal to 0. That's all, very simple. Now what is next step? Just we have to define what is y11, what is y21, y12 and y22. That's all. All of observe here. All the ratios, if you observe, I by V, I by V, I by V, I by V means what? I by V is nothing but admittance. V by I impedance. Inverse of impedance is admittance, that is I by V. Hence all are admittances. What is this admittance? Input current by input voltage, input admittance. Okay, with output port short circuited. Okay, because you are short circuiting the output voltage, output port, no. Hence you have to define like this. This is input admittance, I by V, input current by input voltage, input admittance with output port short circuited. Okay. Suppose if you come here, output current by output voltage is what? Output admittance with input port short circuited. Okay. Next, what is this? If the ratio is output by input or input by output, we use the word transfer. Hence, this is output current by input voltage, transfer admittance. I by V means admittance. Transfer admittance with output port short circuited. This is again transfer admittance with input port short circuited. That is how to define these parameters. Now tell me, what is this? What is this y11? y11 is equal to what? Input admittance. Input admittance with output port output port, port means terminals, short circuited. Then what is Y21? Y21 is what? Again this is transfer admittance with output port short circuited, output port short circuited. Okay. Similarly here, what is this? Y12 transfer, because output current, input current by output voltage, that is transfer admittance with input port short circuited, input port short circuited. Okay. What is Y22? What is Y22? This is output current by output current by output voltage, means output admittance with input port short circuited, ditto. Now after defining all these parameters, just we are going to write the equivalent circuit by considering these defining equations. Okay. Now let us write the equivalent circuit. To write the equivalent circuit, observe these two equations. Both are current equations. So this current, input current I1 is equal to this current plus this current. Y into V is nothing but current, you know. So current is dividing. Current divides in parallel circuit. Similarly, I2 is equal to this current plus this current. Hence, in an equivalent circuit, we will get a parallel circuit at the input port and a parallel circuit at the output port, because I1 is nothing but input current, I2 is nothing but output current. Now let us write the equivalent circuit. Let us write the port here, input port. This is common and this is the output port. Okay. Now this is V1 here, this is V2, output voltage, and input current is I1, output current is I2. Okay, like this. Now what is I1? I1 is nothing but Y11 V1, Y12 V2. This I1 is dividing here into two parts. Okay. So first is Y11 V1. Suppose if I write here the admittance like this, Y11, what is the voltage across this? Is V1. Hence voltage across this into Y11 gives what? This current. That is what? The first term. First term is over. Second term, Y12 V2. Y12 if I write here, V2 is not available. V2 is available here now. Hence I should represent this by a dependent current source like this. So direction must be like this, because this current is dividing here. This value is Y12 V2. Similarly here also I2 is equal to, one is Y22 V2. V2 is available here, so that I can write here, again current is dividing here. This I can write it as Y22 because V2 is available, hence this gives the current Y22 V2. What is the next current? Y21 V1. Since V1 is here, again I have to represent this by a dependent current source like this, that is Y21 V1. Means this is a current source, arrow symbol represents dependent source, arrow represents current source depending on voltage V2, where voltage V2 is nothing but voltage available at the output port. Again dependent source, it is a current source depending on voltage V1. Where is V1? V1 is nothing but voltage at the input port. That's all. This is how to write the equivalent circuit for Y parameters. I hope you have followed both Z and Y parameters in this session. So in the next session, let us continue finding H and T parameters. Thank you.